What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. I am Keith D. Franks of Cutlass Board Games, and joining with me today is our very special celebrity guest, game designer, John. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Clare. I have worked on board games like Scofton, and I have known Keith because we have been in the same board game design circles for a while.
Now.
That's me. I've designed a bunch of board games, but none of them except Scofton have seen print yet.
And some of them are actually really good.
Thank you. Thank you.
But that is something for me to rap about another time.
Indeed.
Tonight, specifically, I wanted to talk to you about psychographic player profiles, because this is something that I had already kind of had a vague understanding of, and then I don't remember how it was presented to me, but you kind of went through and presented this whole thing to me. I think I was part of an audience or something. I think it was a Discord call with a bunch. I have no idea. What I remember is the psychographic player profiles, because that was the thing that stuck with me, and that's been something that has informed a lot of my design stuff. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned on this channel before a few times, where the different types of players and understanding what kind of a player you have or what kind of an experience you are creating is going to cater more specifically to specific types of players. So what we're going to do here is going to be a bit of an introduction of that. We're going to go through some of the different types that you've outlined, and then we're going to brainstorm together examples of ways to build things that cater to these players.
Indeed.
So it's like a practical use of this, I'd say, theory, right? For you to put in your game design stuff. And we've done no prep work. I had this idea 3 minutes ago.
Yeah. So, to break down psychographic profiling, this concept comes from psychology. Usually you'd use it to try and figure out the types of people you might have in different demographics, which is why marketing uses it a lot. So if you study marketing, this is where profiling comes a lot, it shines the best. So say, for example, you're trying to design shoes, you're a shoe company, and you don't know how you want to change in the market. You might figure out, okay, well, the sorts of people who need shoes, what are the different kinds, what are their needs, what are their ages, and based on this, you get profiles of the sorts of people that might want different kinds of shoes. For example, athletes are probably going to want athletic shoes, and then you might have other people who want shoes for style. So they're another profile. Then you have people who want shoes for building things. You need like closed-toed heels and things like that. Each of those becomes a psychographic profile once you add things in into the different things that they appreciate about shoes, the things that they the different things that they want in terms of how it feels, not just how it acts, but how it feels, how it looks. And so there's a deep rabbit hole if you want to go down all the way in terms of the psychology and the marketing. But we're going to talk about it specifically for games. Now, most of the psychographic profiling research has been done on video games because they're one-player games, and they're very easy to do studies on because you only have to worry about one person's response.
Well, also, it's really easy to record digital content of the playthrough and survey people, and you can do it online, and the players probably already got their own game or whatever. All that kind of survey stuff is really easy. With board games, it's going to be much harder to get good info on that, and I think that's why I appreciated what you put together a lot, because it does articulate it quite well. So,
I'm going to quickly run through the video game psychographic profiles. Typically there's 4. The main model has 4. It has killers. These are people who want to get through a game as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. So speedrunners are killers. They want to just smash all the way through, whack all the enemies, beat the boss. Good job. The second people are like achievers. So they're trying to take all the achievements that you can possibly unlock in a game and unlock them as efficiently as possible. Usually the thing that they enjoy about the game is unlocking all the achievements, while killers just want to beat the game as quickly as possible. Then the third group you usually have are explorers. They don't really care about the achievements. They're all about trying to understand the world that this game is trying to bring them in. They're all about trying to enjoy the story. So they will do all the side quests, not because it gives them a tick, but because it's another story that they can enjoy. And finally, there are the socialites. And these are people who play games because of the stories that they can share with their friends. So they can't, like, they jump on the bandwagon, so to speak, but they will be looking for interesting ways of playing the game that they can compare with their friends. So it's a social experience. So each of these different groups want different things, and that's the core part of psychographic profiles. It's how you can understand what people want and tailor a game towards them. And that's why you find in so many games nowadays they actually target these particular profiles and go, how can I make this game good for them? In fact, there's even that, what's the game with the gun that talks to you? There's a game...
High on Life.
Yeah, and then the gun actually asks, like, says, are we speed running this thing? It's like literally going, I see you, killer profile. I'm gonna talk to you about this.
Nice sequence break there, buddy. Are you doing a speed run? Hope you get a high score.
Indeed. Yeah. So, okay. So now I've introduced it into video games. The reason my board games are challenging is because you have two layers to look at. In a single player game, it's just one. It's how that particular person is experiencing the game, the product. But board games have multiple people, and so you have a level of how well do I want to master the game? How well do I want to achieve the things, the good things in the game and understand how it works? And then how much do I want to master the people, the social element, and become really, get my joy out of playing with friends. So if you imagine on a Cartesian plane, if you will, on one end you have, I had fun by interacting with people, and I had lots of fun interacting with people, and I had lots of fun playing the game. On the other side of the plane, everyone had fun. I'm the only one who had fun. So you can start to see these profiles.
If you're looking at this and thinking his hand gestures are ridiculous, I'm doing the same thing. You're not alone.
Yeah.
I will put up a graphic at some point that has exactly what we're talking about on here. But I'm not doing it right away because I will spoil a lot of it. I want to go through and actually explain each one by one before we go and do all that.
Now, what's important is these are my ideas. These are not tested by science. So use them as a reference. They're something for you to think about. They're a concept. They are not researched in any way, shape, or form, except by my own personal experience. So getting into that.
Pick one.
Yeah,
we're going to do one at a time. We're going to go, this is what it is.
Yeah.
John's going to explain it to us. And then we're going to brainstorm the types of parts of a game or mechanics or ways to encourage an experience that will encourage that player to have fun. Or maybe name drop specific games and how they do that well, to give you an idea of how to use these things efficiently when it comes to designing your own kind of game or your own kind of experience.
I'm going to start with one which I think is actually really hard to design around.
Okay.
We're going to call this character the Dictator. But they're actually not necessarily a bad person to have at the table. So the Dictator is trying to make sure that everyone is having fun and everyone is playing the game as best as they can. But the emphasis here is playing as best as they can. So the Dictator tries to tell everybody how the game works. The key thing is they want everybody to understand the game as best as they can so everybody can have fun. Now, if a Dictator is really good at understanding what to do, all they will do is explain the rules, help everyone play as best as they can, and maybe suggest what a good strategy might be at times. Because you want to encourage people to make good choices and understand that strategic depth without completely taking over control.
I have a really radical suggestion for this one.
Yeah?
The moderator role in WereWords. Because I know a person that fits exactly this player profile. And I've played a bunch of different games with them, ranging from Suburbia, the largest box I've ever opened for a board game, to other smaller things. And they kind of run the board game night. And this is just me saying that. You could probably understand how they kind of fit that player profile. We played WereWords, and they were the moderator for the first time to explain it for some new people because they'd never played before. They're, as the moderator, you pick the word and you kind of do the yeses and like that kind of stuff. And like the app does some things as well. And you could see how he was enjoying that aspect of introducing and bringing it to some people. And I feel like the storytelling button on the clock tower is something similar, because you're not playing the game, but you're interacting with the components of the game in a mechanically fun way for yourself, but also providing an experience for other people that you don't have a stake in, win or losing in, but you're trying to provide the best, most fun experience for people.
Indeed.
Whereas you can have a clash where like the worst case for something like this is like maybe a quarterback. Like people complain a lot about quarterbacking in co-op games, which is like a person who has this profile who's put in the wrong circumstances, maybe.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example of a bad dictator. A bad dictator tells everybody what the best move at any given time is. They tell you that while you're making your move, because they don't want you to make the bad move, because they think that will be bad for you, without realizing for themselves that your agency is important. And they actually want you to have fun. They want you to have the most fun and appreciate the game the most that they can. But I have been in this situation before, and it is really challenging at times to switch off, because you're like, oh, do they know all the rules? Are they just not appreciating the game the same way as I am?
When you're seeing them make a mistake, are they making this mistake because they didn't fully understand what is happening? Or do they not see the pitfalls that surround this choice or something like that?
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so a bad dictator will control people's games and make the whole experience bad, because in the end, they'll be the only one playing the game, and you'll have 5 people sitting there wondering why the hell they rocked up to a board game night. But at the best, when a dictator plays well, they've been able to moderate their feelings of needing to be in control, and they're able to suggest at the right time to the people who are struggling some good options that they might want to consider. And another reason why mentioning the psychographic profiles is important is it helps you as a game designer, but it helps you be a better game player. Once you understand when you are in these modes, you can switch to a different mode or moderate that mode.
Well, you're running a demo of a game for the first time for someone. You've just created the best game on the planet. Person coming along is trying to play it, and you're trying to convince them that this is the best game on the planet. Now, for sake of this thought experiment, I'm already convinced that this is the best game on the planet. But you are trying to convince the average punter that that's the case, and you're explaining everything in such a way that it feels like you're marionetting them through this experience. And they're not having fun because they're not able to explore all the different things that makes the game good.
So, my advice, if you recognize that you are being a dictator, take a breath, stop, let your players make mistakes. It's okay. And if you really are struggling, say, if anyone has any questions, come to me at any time. And then you know that people will come to you when they are concerned or confused. And if they're not, that's a different story. You should probably do some self-reflection, because you've got bigger problems.
Right, what's the next one?
The next one is my personal favorite.
Is that because it is you?
No, it's not me, but it's just funny to watch when you figure out what's happening. It's on the entire other end of the game. It says, I want to have fun as an individual. And I want to have fun in this game as an individual, but I don't really care about how the game is played. What I want to do is I want to master the people. So I had fun by interacting with people. This is what I call the babies. It doesn't matter what game you play, you can always be a baby. And the strategy of the babies is to pretend you don't know how the game works, or legitimately not know how the game works. And look for parents who will teach you the game as you play. It's like that person who's playing for the first time and everybody helps them. And then everyone helps them to a position where they're really strong. And then everyone has to like rush at the last minute to like knock them down to try and beat them. So it's a fair game. But the baby knows this is happening. And once the baby has figured out the rules and understands the game, they take great joy in killing their parents. And when I see people who are babies deliberately, I always have a good chuckle inside because I know what's happening. And the reason why they enjoy the game is not because they're playing the game, but they are playing the players. And it's like so much fun to watch.
That's what my first game of Clock Tower was like. I was like, hey, I've just got this really powerful character. What am I supposed to do? And like, oh, do these things. I'm like, sick.
The key thing is you can, in each of these profiles, you can have a good version of the character and a bad version of the character. So a good baby recognizes they're getting help, but they slowly get introduced to the other players that they're getting good. And then, so they don't immediately kill their parents. They toy with them a little bit, make their parents feel proud that they've learnt something, and then they crush them on an even playing field. They're not trying to murder their parents in cold blood. They're trying to mature past them and do better than them. That's a good baby. And then there's the babies who are just cruel and heartless, who are deliberately putting it on just so that people can pity them, and they just want to crush all the competition at the very end.
Because there are some people that are like that all the time.
Yeah.
I've heard in a friend group that they had one person that was such a sore loser that they couldn't play with them unless they let them win. Which it feels like exactly this kind of category, but on obviously the negative side, because everyone has to kind of cater to this in advance before the game's even started.
Yeah. So if a player is controlling everyone else so that they as an individual can have fun, then that is a baby. And it does include acting like a baby. If I'm playing a game that's got a little like attacking, which I've invented games that attack each players, and I enjoy them, and someone gets upset every time I attack them and they're acting like a baby, then they're probably trying to be a baby. They're trying to manipulate my emotions to get a leg up in the game and crush me at the end. And so a bad baby is also really a bad sport. So if you notice that, how would you go about, if you noticed yourself being a baby, how would you go about trying to solve that problem, Keith?
I guess it depends on the circumstances. Because a lot of times when I feel like I'm in that position, it's a lot of time because I feel like I have no agency in my own actions, and therefore the only way that I can regain control of the game is by making other players do things that benefit me, which I find is probably a fault of the game design, or I'm put in a really shitty scenario where I have no other choices, and that like just kind of sucks in general. So it's kind of tough. Maybe sometimes that just means taking the L and going GG next game.
Yeah.
Sometimes that means you just cop 20 minutes of having a shit time so other people can have fun, which sometimes isn't that big deal. A lot of times the trade-off is like, okay, this is maybe a little bit frustrating for me or whatever, it wasn't the best game, but the other people had a lot of fun and they'll want to play again. Which is a piece of advice that I got, and I don't know, I super agree with, was when you're introducing someone a game that you want to play the game with them many times, let them win the first time. And I feel like that feels a little bit in that category. That enables them a little bit to be a baby, but then if they are naturally feeling that way or whatever, you're enabling them. They get to have that fun victory that one time, and then every time after that, you go, okay, now you're on the level playing field. Yeah.
If you are being the baby character, there's two things that you should probably do. The first one is you should try and understand why you are either trying to manipulate other players for your own gain. And then once you understand that, ask, is the end result worth what I'm actually maybe sacrificing? And the second thing you should do is be willing to throw the game out and get better next time, because it's okay losing, and there shouldn't be any shame in losing.
Well, it's losing a fight and coming back to win the battle.
Yeah,
realistically.
Yeah,
it's not the loss. You know.
Yeah, and I think something that's really important is if you notice that someone is being a baby in a game, and ruining it else, like being a bad baby and ruining it for everyone else. There's nothing wrong with taking a pause in the game. The game is not as important as your friendships.
Yeah.
And if the person is sacrificing their friendships to try and win the game by being an asshole, or even just ruthlessly killing them in the game, then perhaps there's a bigger conversation to be had. Yeah, and taking a break will help you do that.
A way that I think design has fixed that problem, Yuno says, I play this thing, the person next to me bites it, but then the player base has come up with this house rule that eventually has been honoured that says, oh, but I put my one on top, and then the next person cops it. So instead of having a take that, which is a you in particular, you get to have a negotiation option, which someone goes, you in particular, and you go, yes, but. Which means that you don't feel powerless in the situation, because in take that, it's an exchange from one side to the other. In a negotiation aspect, you are able to maybe mitigate some of the loss. You're maybe able to take a choice as to how bad it is for you, or like I cut, you choose is sometimes like that. Like here's a bunch of terrible options. You go, okay, I'll make 2 piles and you pick one, kind of a thing. Sometimes like that could be really good. I think the Uno is probably the most universally easy example.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, you in particular, and then you go, okay, but maybe I'm not in trouble here.
The other thing to do is if you are playing a game with... so babies are not good with take that mechanics.
In general,
if you are playing a game with take that mechanics and a baby is, tossing a hissy fit, be firm in your reasoning for why you're attacking people. Because if they become the strongest player and you've been attacking the strongest player, then there's nothing they can sort of do against it. And remember, it's okay to sacrifice one person's fun a little bit for the greater good. If you've got a 4-player game and 3 people are going to have fun and one person's not going to have a good time, more often than not, it's because that one person is playing the wrong game. So if you are running a board game night, or you want to be a better player and you recognize you have baby tendencies, perhaps the best thing for you to do is try to run the game so that you are no longer in a position where you don't know what you're doing. Or try and play Euro games, because then your dictators are going to come and help your babies, and then you're not going to have those take that mechanics. So there's babies.
Yeah. What's next?
This is another one that I'm very well fond of. This is the mad scientist character.
Don't do this to me.
Well, okay. Some of them I love more than others.
Yes.
The mad scientist is particularly interesting because...
The mad scientist is most game designers.
Yeah.
I'm the mad scientist most of the time.
So, to explain the mad scientist, what they want to do is they want to have fun on their own, not necessarily with other players, but they want to do so by maximizing their understanding of the game. They will take a niche thing in the game and get exceptionally good at it. Like, they will steamroll collecting sheep in Catan. They will play a game of poker to collect all of the prime numbers. Not to win, but to collect the prime numbers. They have their own personal way of winning that they have invented because they've decided that that is more fun for them than other players.
More rewarding to hit this strange side goal.
Yeah. Okay. Breaking down the good and the bad mad scientist. The good mad scientist is able to communicate to every other player that they are trying to do this and help everyone else appreciate their grand, ridiculous design. And the bad mad scientist is a player who is not good at communicating to anyone, plays their own game on their own, and screws up everyone else's strategies because what they're trying to do is so counterproductive to everyone else that no one can figure it out.
It can be just close to griefing, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So, for example, if we're playing a game of Settlers Catan and we're all low on sheep because the shepherd over there is pretending to be Jesus, but not telling anyone that they're pretending to be Jesus, then actually all they're doing is creating a monopoly in the game, which is counterproductive to the whole trading mechanisms. So that's kind of shit. But if you declare to everyone, I'm going to be Jesus, I'm going to collect all the sheep. Then
no one will be absent from my flock.
Yeah, and then everyone's like, okay, now we know what he's doing. We can play the same game by trying to deny them of sheep. So being a mad scientist is all about being a good communicator so that other people can work around your ridiculous strategies. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what is a way to encourage a good mad scientist using a game design?
Mad scientists love combos. They love quirks. Okay. So if you can find a quirk in your game that is abusable but not broken, leave it in. If it's a little bit like, if it doesn't make the game extremely clunky, your mad scientist is going to love that. I think the sorts of games that mad scientists really love are ones where they can be really creative.
I feel like stuff like engine builders tend to have a lot of stuff like that.
Deck building games. Collectible card games.
Great example.
Yeah.
The Penny Arcade deck building card game. I can't remember exactly what it's called. But there is a... so the guy that introduced me to the game, we played through it normally, and he goes, this particular card is banned because it's ridiculous. And it's called Bat Milk. And what Bat Milk does, there's like 2 different colors of cards in the game.
Okay.
And what Bat Milk does is it reveals the top 2 cards, and if they're of a particular color, you put them in your hand.
Okay.
And you can have many Bat Milk in your deck.
Oh.
And Bat Milk is that color.
Oh, wow.
So you're like, I'm just playing Storm now. I just loop infinitely, and I'll do other things if I get enough Bat Milk.
Storm is a Magic the Gathering term. It basically means that you're trying to play lots of the same sorts of cards so that they help you play more of the same kinds of cards. Yeah.
Which is... and like, introduce that to me. He's like, I'm going to show you this thing. I'm like, but that's ridiculous. And it's also very, very powerful. But works if no one else sees how powerful Bat Milk is, and they're able to get lots of them. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's, like, it's not broken necessarily. It's an exploit on the fact that the other players don't understand its power. But I think that there's lots of cases like that. I imagine the Gathering has shitloads of that. They design cards specifically and go, this is wonky, and people are like, I love it.
Yes.
I like Probability Storm. Is probably like a really renowned one. Probability Storm says whenever you cast a spell, you exile and then reveal cards from the top of your library until you have something of the same type and cast that for free. So you're just like, oh, just whatever I'm doing is read stuff off the top of my deck.
Yeah. My favorite thing about Possibility Storm is in combining it with another card that does it for every player. So that, and then making it so that there's another card you can get, which, when it happens, they can also choose to exile the top card of their library to a group pool, and then pull out a card from the group pool and then
knowledge
use it.
Pool. And Hive Mind is the full combo.
But you screw the Hive Mind.
It just gets so much more complicated as it goes along.
Mad scientists actually really like complicated rules that can be exploited. That means, so you're going to have a challenge as the designer, trying to go, how can I make this game not too complicated and approachable, but with enough details that a mad scientist can appreciate. And that's why they love card games.
But Magic the Gathering is a mad scientist, perfection.
Wet dream. So I think the key thing is, if you want to design games for mad scientists, make sure you're designing the right sort of genre of game, and it's not a game where if someone completely abuses one rule, it will ruin it for everyone.
Well, yeah, because there's a difference between the spamming the broken combo in a fighting game versus spamming the broken combo in a deck building game.
Exactly.
So then you have to keep mindful on what the ceilings look like, what the accessibility looks like, and that kind of stuff.
So we've been talking a lot recently about people who have fun on their own. I'm going to quickly go through the last one in this category that I would normally talk about. This is the silent competitive type. And they just care about having fun on their own. They don't mind interacting with people, but the reason why they're going to interact with people is to get more knowledge about what the person knows so they can win the game better. The key thing they care about is that they had fun by beating the game as effectively as possible, and that might include some mastery of people. So they're sort of in between with the mastery of people, but they're 100% mastery of the game. 100% I want to have fun. And that's why they're usually silent, because they don't want to give out any extra information that might help them, that might help their opponents win the game. because to them, the intellectual level is that competitive, mechanical part of the game. And the sorts of people that you find do this a lot of people in chess. Like chess players are almost all silent competitive types.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, they're not sort of like loose, oh, we can change a rule sort of thing. We're all having fun. It's just a game. No, they're like, no. It may just be a game to you, but to me, this is
the
art.
game. It's the
game.
Yeah.
I will smash you at it, and it's your job to step up to the plate and challenge me. And if you don't, too bad. Find another game. I'm not going to talk too much about that. I think everybody has had some sort of experience with a silent competitive player, and if you haven't, play more chess.
Well, I think you could even just find footage of chess players.
Yeah.
And watching it gives you a pretty... Watching the Queen's Gambit will introduce you to some characters that are really emblematic of this.
Or poker. A lot of poker
Poker
players.
does. Actually, poker is interesting. In Texas Hold'em, if you do... Because I've watched a fair bit of like kind of streamed content, video content or whatever, and they show off the people that are the silent competitive type. They're like really in their tank. They're thinking about all the odds. What are my moves? What's the best way for... Am I to pocket mid? All this kind of stuff. And then you have the wild card guy who's more like playing the player. What are they bluffing? Am I bluffing? So poker is really interesting because it does hit a wide range of that for what could potentially be a pretty simple game. Design spec wise.
Anyway, that's the silent competitive player. I'm not going to talk about them anymore. On the other side, I'm going to talk about two more players that where the most important thing to them is that everyone has fun, as opposed to that I had fun. So we've talked about dictators. They really care about everyone having fun. But the next type of people is sort of a step down from the dictator. They're the adjudicator. To them, the most important thing is that everyone has fun, and they do care about the rules. They do care about mastering the game, but they care most about fairness. They just want everybody to have a fair game. They understand people are at different levels. Not everyone has to play as well as everyone else. To them, as long as it's fair, that's all that matters. Which can be a problem sometimes. Not all games are fair. And adjudicators love to try, when they recognize that something unfair has happened, usually a dice roll, and someone cracks a hissy fit, the adjudicator wants everybody to feel better about what's happening. Which means that you often find adjudicators like making weird house rules.
Yeah.
Which can sometimes cause problems because then the house rule makes the game worse or makes it longer. Monopoly is the best example of how this happens. Because unfortunately, while the house rules make it a somewhat more comfortable game, they make it a longer game. And then it's like 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that.
So, on the other side, you have good adjudicators who are more comfortable with some of that luck not working out for them. And they'll make up for helping a player out who's had bad luck by trying to support them in the game with good moves that support other players rather than changing the game. So that's sort of what the adjudicator is trying to do. The other thing is if the adjudicator cares about everybody having a fair and fun game, so they're good people to have around when there's fights going on. Okay. So long as they're not encouraging more complexity. Okay. Yeah. Right. So that's basically the adjudicator. So I suppose your next question is, well, how would you design a game, redesign a game for an adjudicator? What sort of games do you think? Redesigning a game.
The way that I would encourage an adjudicator's behavior. We already mentioned I cut, you choose. I feel like that. Definitely fits in that kind of a category. I think negotiation type games. So the trading mechanic in Catan, for example. I think there's a lot of other negotiation type games that are kind of like that. Not like specifically trading, but there's other ones that are kind of like that. That I think would kind of fit into that category. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking if you're designing a game and you want to be aware of the adjudicator mindset, the key thing is fairness. You want to make sure that the game is fair enough so that the game doesn't unnecessarily punish people in a way that really hurts.
Okay, so do you think mitigating RNG?
Not entirely.
But so it doesn't have big swing points?
Yeah.
It's more like a smaller range than a greater range?
And if you do get to big swing points, you want those swing points to be gradual. And when they finally get to the big swings, it's because people have worked up to them. It's because people have invested in them. And it's a payout. It's not just like, oh, I get to there.
My 20 is better than your 3 or whatever.
A great example of a game that does this poorly is Dungeons and Dragons.
I was literally just thinking that.
Yeah, so the worst thing about Dungeons and Dragons is you can invest a lot of time in making a character, and then a dungeon master who's trying to introduce you to a threat that's a bit too strong, pulls the threat out, and they one-hit kill all the party. And it's just like, oh shit. And then everyone who has their inner adjudicator is like, this isn't fair. I'm never going to play this again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with games that have a lot of luck, like a card comes out and it instantly kills you, or you roll some dice and there's like nothing the player can do to mitigate that luck, then you're going to make all of your adjudicators very sad inside. However, if you are designing a game that has a lot of luck, if the luck doesn't hit too hard and players can work around the luck, like as you said, I pass, you choose, that sort of thing, or I roll, there's a choice there, and someone has the ability to make a decision after that, that is a fantastic way to redesign your game to make it comfortable for adjudicators.
So retaining agency in a situation of... so like death saves is a good way of solving that problem. You go, here's the big threat, it does this ridiculous thing and it kills all your people, and you're like, but you can roll a death save and your guy maybe doesn't die.
Yeah.
Same as like, I mean, it does kind of come back to that mitigating thing, but retaining player agency after a great outlier result. So someone might do something that's really, really good, but it might just win the game for them on the spot and makes them leap really, really far in front of everyone else. But then maybe the downside of whatever that thing was means that other people also have like a leapfrog opportunity.
Yeah.
Or you have something really, really bad happen to you, but you have an opportunity to get out of jail free card, or you can sacrifice something else to mitigate how bad this is. I think about those kind of things a lot because I really don't like take that, and not necessarily that I hate seeing people kicking down. That's one of the things that really irritates me about Catan. It's like if I'm in last place by 4 points and you're targeting me with the robber, you are not playing to win the game. You're playing to make me have a bad time.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
and I don't think that should be an option. I don't think that should be encouraged. And I think that's the main one that brings out the adjudicator in me. Like, this isn't fair. You've put me in a situation where I can't do anything to avoid this, and I can't catch up. And I think being able to have things that are able to mitigate that without like a huge loss from that player or a negotiation aspect or something like that.
I think the other thing to consider is how well do you how well does your game provide opportunities for players to help each other out? Because the other thing you can do, like you can provide people choices at the end of luck, but you can also provide mechanics that give people benefits from helping each other out, particularly if they're helping the last player. That's a lot harder to design around, and not a lot of games have it. But if you can do that and make it so your slingshot mechanic comes from another player, then that can be a really enjoyable experience, because then players feel like, oh, I made it fair. It's like crack for adjudicators.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, imagine if you're helping the person who's in last place by 4 points, they're still not really a threat.
Yeah.
Like, realistically, unless if you're helping them all the way to the finish line, helping them out one time when they're in a bad situation is still going to be a good positive moment between between the two players.
Especially when one player's really far behind. The first player helps them out. The second player helps them out. The third player helps them out. All those other players benefit, and now suddenly you're much tighter. But everyone else has maximized their score.
That's what you want. You want the climactic neck and neck finish.
Exactly.
You want the 3-horse right along the finish line, and it's the photo finish, right?
Indeed.
Rather than the one person that's played the game before in first, and then one person that's got some tangential experience in second, and then third and fourth are like, why did I show up today?
Yeah.
So I guess that's something to think about.
So the last. I've got one more to go. The last one is the contributor, and I love and hate contributors. So what a contributor does is they care about everybody having fun, and they care about mastering this social level. But that also means that they don't actually care about the game. Like, this is the sort of person that hosts a board game night, not because they actually want to play board games, but they know everyone will turn up and they can chat.
Nice.
They're also the sort of person that's likely to go and get people like tea or coffee or other things, organize the pizza order. They actually just care about everybody having fun and having a good time. And that might also mean that they are not playing competitively at all, sometimes even detrimental to their own strategy, which is really annoying if you are a competitive player or you're a dictator, because in those situations, if they're not maximizing the game, you don't like the fact that they're not playing logically.
Well, especially if it's cooperative.
Yeah.
Or in my case, detrimental to the clock. When a game drags longer than an hour, I get grumpy. And so if a person is filibustering to order pizza or make everyone tea, I'm like, look, just take your time.
Yeah. So like a good contributor will try their best to play a game well, but also recognize moments in the game where they can step away and do things to help everyone else feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Or a good contributor will try their best to not necessarily knock themselves out, but just not be aggressive in the game, so that, you know, this person had a moment to shine, and this person had a moment to shine, and this person had a moment to shine.
I've played with contributors in the past, or sometimes it's been me also, where it's been like, oh no, I've lost. Now I can go and do that thing that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I'll come back with it for the next round or whatever.
Sometimes if the player is deliberately kicking themselves out because they realize that they're not as into it as everyone else, but they're doing it in a way where they're making the game fair for everyone, that's actually really good. Because you don't want someone playing, like, not getting to the level that you're in and just having a turn there that's not really adding any extra benefit to everyone else.
Griefing or kicking down or contributing in a negative way rather than a constructive way.
Yeah. And I think that the bad contributors are the ones that just take too long because they're not sure. They take too long or they don't care. Like, they take too long doing things that are outside the game, or a bad contributor might be like trying to take a photo of the game to let everyone know.
It's for the gram.
Yeah. Or
I'm
like
a bit like that.
Yeah, sometimes they don't just want the immediate vicinity of people to enjoy the game. They want everybody.
What about the game. Oh, I have design notes.
Oh yeah, so
as soon as you started explaining this one, I was like, oh yeah, I have design notes.
Yeah, okay. Sometimes you get contributors, especially if you're a games designer, who believe that they need to tell you how to improve your game.
Because they're not invested in a specific game themselves.
Yeah.
They've recognized something they think they can fix, and their contribution is notes.
Yeah. Now, that being said, a good contributor will say, I have design notes, but will say, if you want them, ask me.
Yeah. After the game.
Yeah, after the game. Not during the game. I freaking hate it when I get a playtest and someone's like, I want to tell you how to make your game better in the middle of the game.
It's turn 2. We're still kind of learning. Yeah. I've recognized something. Yeah.
Oh man.
Tell me. We'll continue.
Yeah. That was just, don't do that. That's the worst kind of contributor. But how to handle a contributor is to kind of let them go and recognize that what they are trying to do is actually improve what's going on. And, you know, if they are trying to fly away from the game, let them. They will come back when they are ready to engage. And if you recognize that someone's going like tea, coffee, like getting tea, coffee, biscuits or whatever, to say, hey, do you mind if we play a few turns without you, and we will find a way of bringing you back in. It may not make the perfect game. It may not be the best way for a silent competitive type to play because they will not be able to crush that player anymore. But trust me, for the majority of people, it'll be better because then the mad scientists can do their crazy stuff. The dictator can get into actually helping people achieve the best role.
Well, when the contributor comes back, the dictator is like, okay, this is what we do to get you back to where everyone else was. Or this is the adjudicator is like, well, this is the fair thing for everyone to feel like you were at the same place playing at the kind of rate that you were at or whatever. And
the baby isn't going to invest in the contributor to help them out. Even though the contributor might want to, because they're like, everybody's got to have fun. But the baby will be like, oh no, you're not really into the game. I'm not going to enjoy crushing you later. Anyway, so there's 6 personalities.
That is. Which one do you think you are most often?
I feel like I'm probably closest to the adjudicator.
Okay.
Going on to mad scientist.
For me, I think it depends on the game. When I'm playing people's prototypes and stuff, and I'm aware that eventually they're going to want feedback, I play mad scientist contributor. I play as the mad scientist in a way to find exploits and broken parts of the game, so I can go, well, I did this and that meant this, and the contribution is the notes, but through show rather than tell. When I'm playing stuff like Marvel Snap, Magic the Gathering, mad scientist, because the satisfaction I get is I built something that beat someone else, where I'm the engineer rather than the pilot, which I think is very obvious because I'm a game designer. I go, well, I engineered the thing. When the people piloted, they had fun. Therefore, I was successful as the mad scientist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's interesting.
I think the important thing that you should do is you should figure out which of these profiles you align to most when you play games in any particular game, and say, how can I be a better thing? How can I be a better player? Because that to me is where I use these most. And from a design perspective, it's worth thinking about what each of these different kinds of players want when you build a game. And if you're playing a game as yourself, you can be like, okay, what might a baby do? What might a mad scientist do? What might an adjudicator do, etc. Anyway, hope you find this useful.
Yeah, that is something we were talking about today. Something I think about a lot, especially when it comes down to designing stuff. Like knowing I want to take that from things, because I know that there is a whole group of people, a whole 6 of them or whatever, that aren't going to enjoy it at all because it exists and stuff like that. So becoming aware of and having an understanding of how these things work and how they influence the player choices that are going to happen in potentially your game, it is helpful to be mindful of it and how it interacts, and to be thinking about ways to encourage the positive parts of those psychographic player profiles. Now, I hope that was helpful. It actually helped me a lot the first time that John went through it with me, and we actually do have a lot of other kind of board game stuff, board game development stuff, devlogs. I have a lot of other just game content in general, so if you're interested in any of that, I will have buttons up on the screen for you to come and click on. Check out some of the other stuff. Hit that like and subscribe button. I know you hear it 1,000 times every day that you're on YouTube, but clicking literally every button on the screen helps me in some way. And whenever I see the notification thing pop up when I'm on YouTube, I have a big smile on my face, because that makes it somewhat worthwhile. The 49 minutes that we spent. But that is it from us. Hope to see you in the next one.